Oh, hey guys, how you doing? Nice to see you. Welcome to the train station. My name's Ken Steepe. This is Kayl McCann. Today we're talking about rewarding in dog training and how important it is that you reward correctly. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges you might have. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that you can make through rewarding. Appropriate rewarding is really, really important in your dog training. So in today's show, we're going to talk about how you can make the most of your rewards and why it's so important to move away from food, or how you can do that with well-timed rewards. It's really, really important. And it's actually something, it can lead to a bit of a leadership challenge if you're not rewarding correctly, if you're, rewarding with poor timing. There's all sorts of things that we're going to talk about today to make sure that you're making good choices with your dog and to speed up your training, to make your dog, make you more successful, make your dog more confident, to really help you through this process. But that's what we've got on tap. Now, the nice part about doing the pre-show, running the pre-show so close to before we start talking is that I don't have to do a lot of chatting. And we can just talk about what we're going to talk about. So in today's episode, are you rewarding too much? And how is that affecting your training? I'm Ken Steepe.
I'm Kayl McCann.
Welcome back to McCann Dogs. I said it before, but seeing season 3 is pretty cool up there when we see season 3 of the train station. Now, something that's really important that we should mention is that we're going to change up the train station schedule a little bit for our live dog training shows. Now, normally we do 3 shows a month and then 1 show because of scheduling and stuff we can't show. We're actually going to go to a bi-weekly show. So we'll do, if you didn't watch us, if we weren't here last week, we'll definitely be here this week. So what's important for you guys to know is to click that bell for notifications. So right beside the subscribe button's a little bell so that you don't miss one of the train stations and so that you don't miss out on something, that can really change your training. But
I guess we should say too, we're still going to do some agility live streams from time to time.
Yeah, for sure.
But we've shifted that over to our agility YouTube channel. So if we have any agility lovers on there, we'll continue to do those, but we're going to separate it from this entity. This is going to be more about dog training, and the other channel will be about agility.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really important point. The other thing, if this is your first time here and you're like, who are these guys? My name's Ken Steepe. This is Kayl McCann. We're professional dog trainers at McCann Dogs. And at McCann Dogs, we get to help, and the trainers get to help more than 500 dogs every week to, come when called, to walk on a loose leash, to work on the same dog training challenges that you have. So our discussions in our weekly train station, you're going to see me toot if this is your first time here.
He does a lot of that.
I do a lot of tooting over the course of the day, over the course of the training. And we're going to talk about, how we can help your dog. So if you have questions, make sure you drop them in the chat. We do these for you to ask your questions and to dive a little deeper into your training challenges. So you'll also know that we wouldn't be able to do this without a little help from our friends. And we have a very important member of the train station crew that we like to send our satellite link to. And we're just going to check out, see what Dan, Lots of Links Luton, is up to. There he is. Hey, buddy. And there's Lucy Lou hanging out with him.
Luce.
Very cute. So Dan is our moderator. You will see him in the chat. I also see Becky Parker is one of our other moderators. She is also,
hello.
She's dropping up.
I also see a familiar face, Betty Ann Major.
Very cool. Yeah, welcome back, Betty Ann.
Nice.
The other thing we love to do, it's sort of a ritual here, is I want to know where you're watching from. And it's time for the roll call. Let us know where you are checking into the train station from. We get so many interesting people from all over the world, and I love checking out all of the cool places. I have to research often where some of these places are, but I love to know where you guys are checking in with us from. I see Daryl's in the chat. Welcome back, Daryl. We haven't seen you in a little while. It's good to see you back. And I'm just trying to set up our bot and make sure everything's going okay. Let's talk. Just one sec. Oh, I guess look at the chat is a flying. So I'm going to try to keep up here, and this is a challenge, but we're going to try it. So I want to say hello to, or welcome to, Kiwi Kaylee from Mount Olive, Illinois, Patricia from upstate New York, Joanne from Wilmington, Dave Spong is joining us. Welcome, Dave. Oh no, I've lost it. It jumped. See John from Palm Springs, California, Kathy Sasita back from Indianapolis, Indiana, Ashley from the Bay. Jacksonville, North Carolina, Long Island, New York, KDC. I see Max Marinac from Brisbane, Australia.
Nice.
Welcome, Max. I hope everything's going okay for you guys there in Australia. Becky's joining us from Nebraska. Willie from San Diego. Oh boy, it's moving very quickly now. It's hard to keep up. Can you catch some of those as I get this stuff out?
Yeah, we have, I'm in Mexico, but I live in Hawaii. We were
Cool.
just in Hawaii last year getting married. Palmdale, California, Philadelphia. First time on the channel for Marge Rudder. Welcome,
Oh,
Marge.
cool.
I'm glad you're here. Durham, North Carolina, Jacksonville, Florida, Melinda Miller. I think she joined us last week. I
Yeah.
recognize that
Yep.
name. Another person from Hawaii, Andrea Dreyer, Carl Boyer, Kimberly Jackson, Houston, Jersey. Awesome.
Very cool.
So many.
The other thing I wanted to mention, I know the last couple times when we talked about, we finally have our McCann Dog store up and running for you if you need training equipment, training supplies, and you guys basically bought us out of our 3/4 leashes, so we're gonna have to wait until we get some of those back. But there's an order coming in, I think next week. Also, our training pouches and I think those are medium or large dental leaders. We're way down in stock, but I just want to test our bot and make sure things are going okay. But there it is. And you'll also see Spot the Bot. So Dan may call upon Spot the Bot to help us out with the chat. Let's talk about rewarding in dog training. Let's talk about how important it is. Let's at the beginning, I know we probably have lots of puppy owners who are here with us on the show. Let's talk about how much we use food in the beginning.
Yeah, we use food quite a bit when we're starting off with a new puppy, or even if we're starting off with an older dog that maybe is new to us, or we have students that have older dogs that they're sort of starting over with their training. We use quite a bit of food rewards and other types of rewards as well.
Yep.
We like to start off that way because we like to basically get the dog really encouraged and motivated to work for us so that we can build some motivation and get the dog doing things correctly a lot. But we do have the intention of weaning off of the food or the amount of food that we use
Right.
as we move along in our progression and training and as things are going better. But we often have people that are, quite alarmed by the amount of food that we have, and they get a bit panicky.
Yeah.
And then those same people are the people who often say, "Oh no, now you're making me take it away, and this is
Right.
getting scary."
Right.
So there is a transition that we do so that the reward and the food, toys, whatever you're using as a reward, it truly becomes a reward that could be random rather than what we call a lure. So a lure is basically what we would use if we had the food always present in order to get the dog to pay attention. We find some dogs will say, "Yeah, let me see your fingers first, and then I'll
Right.
see whether you have food or not, and I'll
Right.
decide to listen." Or so those people that say, "Oh, my dog's not coming," so they go inside and they shake the cookie bin or they shake the cookie package, and then the dog says, "Okay, I'll come." Well, that's not really a dog that's truly trained. That's a dog that's really taught the human how to take out what they want in order to listen to them. So
Right.
everybody has to start somewhere, but again, the intention is to work towards not being able to use rewards all of the time in our training. And the other thing that we're going to touch base on too is that rewards don't have to mean food. Reward could be food for sure. It could be toy. It could be touch. For sometimes just even the use of your voice, the tone of your voice, what you say, how you say it. What we like to do in our training is use a combination of all of those things. And those combinations can really let the dog know what we like and what we love, and then what we're like super impressed with. That's what we would call jackpot rewarding. So we might use multiple treats, lots of extra praise, touch, all of the things together to really let the dog know we love what we want. So we use different types of rewards in our training, and we also use different degrees of it as well to make sure that we're providing clarity with what we like.
For sure. And when we talk about timing and reward, timing is so crucial, and that applies like throughout your training journey.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to talk about today is like not only your timing, but like how often you need to be rewarding, because your intention is to not always, especially this time of year, if you're in like the northern part of the continent, it's freezing up here.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have to be carrying food to get results with your dog. good timing can also mean greater effort, not only more success, but like your dog working harder, which is something that we're focused on motivation. We want our dogs to be motivated and want to listen and want to work. We're actually going to talk a little bit about how you can use some of that good reward timing to increase the motivation, to get your dog like trying harder. And that's like a bit of an unlock. When you get that, you're leveling up your training. When you get that with your dog, and we'll talk a little bit, excuse me, about that tonight. Now, generally, let's talk about the beginning stages of some exercise, and let's pick an arbitrary exercise. I mean, it doesn't even.
Yeah, I think we could even take it back even more than that. So when we're starting off brand new with a dog and we're trying to get them introduced to the concept of working for food, one of the things that we like to do is utilize their breakfast or their dinner as part of what we use to train them. We might even train them at, specifically at that time, amongst other times of the day as well, because we know they tend to be very hungry. They know that the food's there. They want the food. But another thing that we like to do is we like to stash little containers of food here, there, everywhere, where we can have rewards readily available to reinforce the dog for coming in the door when we call them from the backyard, or for being patient at the door when people come in, or we always have like a little cookie jar on top of our dog's crate. So every time our dog goes in their crate when they're younger, they get a reward. So we have access to reinforcement all of the time. And of course, these things aren't things that we really care too much about as the dog starts to get older. Another really great trick that I do with my dogs is so that they don't end up putting on a lot of weight or losing motivation in the food, is I'll give them a little bit of their food and then I'll put the rest of their meal in a Ziploc bag, and then I might add some cheese or some hot dogs or some rollover or things that are really high value, and I mix it in with the kibble, and then I'll keep that Ziploc bag on me so that when I'm doing training, or if I'm going for a walk, or even taking the puppy out for a pee, I have a few treats ready and waiting to work on response to name, to work on recall, allowing my puppy to take their collar. I'll reward them for that. So I feed as much as I possibly can in the beginning to really teach the dog what I want them to do.
Yeah, really important. I see some good questions coming in. Now, normally, if you've been to the train station before, you'll know that we do like some demonstrations, then we answer your questions. But there's a couple questions I think would be great to jump into right now and answer so that you guys can get some of these answers. Now, Yvette mentions that if no treat, she doesn't listen, knows commands, but doesn't want to follow directions. Help, it's a 12-week-old puppy. Now, I mean, I appreciate that you're setting your expectations pretty high with your 12-week-old puppy, but you might find that your timing is a little bit out of order. And often what will happen is people will present the food, show the dog the food, and then follow it with a command. Super common. But what do you think that puppy's thinking about? What do you think is on that puppy's mind when you have those treats in your hand, those treats, that reward, and they're not listening at that point anymore? So make sure once you've shown your dog like what the sitting position looks like, or do a circle or whatever the thing is that you're training, it's always, after that point, it's always cue your voice, whatever the command is, then the lure. If you get them out of order, you're going to encounter this kind of thing.
I think it's also important to say that we wouldn't expect a 12-week-old puppy to be working without food at this point.
Totally.
Weaning off of the food isn't something that we would do until our dog was a little bit older. When you have a baby puppy like that, we would encourage you to keep the puppy on a leash or a line all the time and have food with you ready and waiting, or a toy or whatever reward you want to use. So that your dog's getting a high rate of reinforcement. 12 weeks old isn't very old yet. There's still lots to learn. There's still lots of worlds to discover.
It's a fun part of the training process,
really
though. Yeah, that adorable little puppy.
Don't be in a huge rush to get to wean off of the food quite yet. I think you're still pretty early in your training.
I love my pit bull. My girl is capable of refusing if I don't bring the goods. I need to use a more balanced approach to my program. Yeah, and when we talk about that approach, it's if your dog understands the behavior and can do it like in a quiet environment, then you might need to follow up with like a sit placement. You might need to follow up with a little bit of leash to bump them back in if you're walking on loose leash, whatever that thing is. You really do. The other thing is you might switch up the rewards. Maybe trying a different reward can really like get your dog activated and fired up and motivated to work for you. But there will be times when your dog just isn't interested in food. It's just not the ultimate reward. But what we need to talk about today is when you're rewarding too much. Like there is a time, we talk about this with sometimes students, they really want their dog to be successful, and they think that the only way that they can really show the dog that they're making great choices is to feed them. Or sometimes they'll just randomly reward stuff. And if you take...
Yeah, they don't know what else to do, so they just think, okay, well, I'll just feed the dog.
Yeah, if you take something away from today's show, it is that what you reward is what you're ultimately going to get. So I want you to be really aware in your mind of what you're rewarding. This is going to be a bit of a tongue twister today. It's going to be a challenge. What and when you're rewarding. Like, those two things are so important. And once you sort of cross a threshold of success or a level of understanding with your dog, you can start to remove treats from the process or randomize things. You can randomize those kinds of rewards. But I think we should talk a little bit about like replacing a fix than feeding.
Yeah, before we get into that though, what you just said was really important. So what you reward your dog for is what they will repeat. So basically, the way that the dogs work and the way that they think, the way that they learn, is dogs typically will gravitate or they'll repeat things that they find rewarding. And that could be things that you reward them for. That also can be things that they find rewarding themselves without you even in the picture. Typically, if a dog has a negative experience and they don't really like it, they tend to not repeat that thing again. That's just kind of how dogs work. So our idea of how we train dogs, how we base our training plans, is that we know dogs like to do things that are reinforcing. So when we're starting something new or retraining something or whatever it might be, we think about, okay, how can we set the dog up to be successful so that, 90% of the time or sometimes 100% of the time that they do this behavior, they do it correctly so that they're doing it right. They're getting positively reinforced for that. And then the dog goes, oh, okay, I like coming to you, or I like walking at your left-hand side, or I like being quiet when that dog goes by, because we set them up to make that choice so that we can reward them for it. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, and it's going to bleed into a lot of the things that we're going to talk to you about today, because a lot of people tend to do the opposite simply because they don't know any better. They sort of put the dog into a situation that is maybe above them or they're not ready yet, and they open the dog up to have a high chance of failing. And then now we're faced with a couple options. Number one, the dog fails, so we get frustrated, or and then the dog gets upset because you get upset and the whole kit and caboodle happens. Or what happens is you set them up to fail, and maybe it's on a behavior that is a very self-rewarding behavior to a dog. So I can give you an example. Jumping up. That's a super self-rewarding behavior. So if I have people coming to the door and my dog's just running loose in the house, there's no leash on, there's no control, somebody opens my door and my dog gets to jump up on the person who's walked in for 5 or 6 seconds before I'm able to finagle the dog off, that basically has taught my dog, when people come to the door, run to that person as fast as you can, jump all over. It's super, super, super fun, and then you'll get pulled off. But the crime's already been committed, and you're not going to fix your problem. So in that scenario, it would be much smarter to say, hey, if you're coming to my house in like the next 10 minutes, send me a text, let me know when you're in the driveway. And then I'm going to have the leash on the dog. I'm going to have my treats ready. And when they approach the door, I'm going to give my dog a job to do. And I'm setting the dog up to make a good choice so that I can reward them for being calm as the person comes in. Or maybe I don't want to deal with the dog in that moment because there's like 10 people coming in the house and there's chaos happening.
And it's just not the right situation to give them good information. And that's what you need to focus on.
So then I would prevent it and say, okay, text me. I'll put the dog in the crate. I'll put the dog in the crate, give them a Kong, give them something that will distract them. People can come in my home and my dog's not rehearsing that bad behavior. So I'm not doing all this great success and then unraveling it because I've, not controlled the situation and the dog's rehearsed something inappropriately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. An important, I want to answer Janique's question because I think it applies to a lot of people. She says, my miniature poodle is 14 months old and I still use treats for different things, like when we encounter other dogs or people outside, or I try to keep her by my side. Is she getting too old? And this is something that people,
I don't think so.
Right. And this is something that people often ask.
What you're doing is great.
Is my dog, is my dog too old to have a house line on? Is my dog too old to something? And it's all about your dog's level of understanding. So we'll use food as a reward with like a 10-year-old dog
Yeah.
if it's the right situation. And that's exactly what we need to identify tonight. How to use your food correctly so that you aren't dependent on food, but you can still capitalize on those moments when they make great choices.
And I think it's important too, like we have lots of dogs. Our dogs range from 15 all the way down to 3 years old. And honestly, there's lots of times where I'll go hiking in the woods and I will bring treats with me, not because I feel that I need them. My dogs have great recalls, but because my dogs enjoy running back and having a little tug with me or having a reward.
Ellis.
Whoa!
Lighten up the train station. Yeah. Thank you very much, C. Ellis, for the super chat. Very, very cool. And as you see, when you drop the super chat, you light up the train station.
Where's the toothy corgi or the swimming corgi?
Oh, you just no, it's not the corgi anymore.
Oh, it's the toothless pug. I mean, very toothy pug.
Very toothy.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, C. Ellis. I appreciate you supporting the train station. Thank you for that. That's very, very cool.
Nice.
Very cool.
I totally forgot what I was talking about. We sometimes will take a reward with us because it's just the dogs enjoy it and it's something nice to do. But the point that we're getting at is you want to get to the point where you don't need to have the reward. It's something that you can implement to help your dog, but some dogs might still need it at that point, and that's okay. So if and also scenarios are different, like taking your dog for a walk where there's other dogs walking. That's really challenging. That might be one of the last training situations that you would remove food, right. Where when you're sitting in the house and you want your dog to lie down on the bed and chill out, maybe you don't need to reward your dog for that hardly at all, even early on in the stages. So not every dog behavior that you change is going to be trained or addressed or reinforced in the same manner. You have to decide what's easy or difficult for your dog and also for your training ability. There's going to be certain things that you connect with and you understand to train really quickly. There's other things that you might be a bit more challenged with. And so maybe having a higher rate of reward in those moments is going to give you a greater degree of success.
Yeah. And this is a little delayed, but I just wanted to give C. Ellis a big for dropping the super chat. They mentioned toot. Thanks for doing what you do. Thank you.
So nice. Chat. Thank you a lot.
So let's talk a little bit about how we use reward, and let's maybe a specific situation, something like sitting at your side, where if your dog gets up, if your dog makes a mistake, we need to. That's not the time to pull out food. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about that, like building an understanding and then when to know that food isn't the answer. Food isn't what we're going to use to get the dog back in that position.
Yeah, so to make it easy for you to understand, dogs have a 1 second learning time frame. So if they do a behavior, and so what we do with our training is we use the word yes to pinpoint when the dog is correct.
Yes.
And
it's our condition. Yes. It's our conditioned reinforcer.
Yes.
That's the moment that the dog is absolutely right, and we use it sparingly.
Yeah, and when we use it, we reinforce the word a lot in the beginning by feeding. So yes, and then we feed. Yes, and then we feed. Yes, and then we feed. And that pairing starts to build a really high value for the word yes. So when we work on something like having the dog sit at our side, if the dog is able to sit, and the reason why we do that is because we want to teach the dog a very controlled behavior where the dog is working impulse control. Mm-hmm. It's mainly what we use it for, among many other things. But as the dog is sitting at our side on a loose leash, if they're choosing to focus and to be attentive and to be calm, we would say yes, and then we would feed. But dogs being dogs, there's going to be times where distractions go by or they're just not interested in paying attention to you.
Sure.
And they're going to get up and move away. And we have a lot of people that use the food in order to get the dog back to the side. So they get the treat out and they lure the dog back and they tell the dog sit and then they feed them. And if you repeat that a couple times, because of the way that the timing works, we have a lot of dogs that start to figure out that if they're sitting at your side and they get up and they walk away, you're going to pull out food and you're going to start the exercise again. And a lot of smart dogs will actually start to get up from the sit on purpose. So they'll make an error on purpose because they've learned that, owner up there is going to bring more food out. So what we want to encourage you to do is use the reward and the food or the petting or whatever it is when your dog is doing the correct behavior. And if they're doing the incorrect behavior, we want you to show them what they can be doing differently. So for the sit, for example, we would have you shorten up on the leash and just place the dog back into a sit at your side once again. Then, very importantly, we would loosen the leash and just give the dog a few moments to try. Again, timing is everything. If I was to stomp on Ken's foot and then give him a treat after, or give him like chocolate or
I do love
whatever,
chocolate.
he would probably say, come on, stomp on my foot again. So if I was to place him back and I was going to give him a cookie, he would say, okay, I'm going to get up so you can place me back again, because of that 1 second time frame. So what I would need to do to train my dog is my dog would get up, I would place them back. I might even count 1, 2, 3 in my head. I would look down and make sure that the dog's holding the position I want. In this case, it would be a sit. Then I would say yes, and I would reward. So clearly the dog's understanding what they're being reinforced for. And the timing is so specific, and it's why a lot of people struggle with it, because, they don't really realize that the way that the dog learns. But something like that is really, really important.
Guys, this is where the gold is. Like when you're making these choices, when you're giving your dog an opportunity to choose to remain in position in that sit, if they get up 10 times, you replace them 10 times.
Yeah.
But don't be in a rush to feed them. Really get them to sit there on a loose leash for 3-4 seconds, whatever, a short amount of time, but make sure that they've committed to that sit, that they've earned that paycheck. At that point, they've earned yes, and then reward. It's so common, and I know people struggle with it because they just don't see as many dogs as we get to see. But for people to replace then feed, or for the dog to do something that they don't like, for them to stop it and then to immediately feed them, or immediately give them, a chew toy. So a great example, we were chatting about this with last week's train station, or maybe two train stations ago, I don't even remember. But we were talking about interrupting chewing behaviors. When your dog chews on the leg of your table, and you interrupt that behavior, you don't immediately give your dog something else. You need to affect change. Hey, you knock that off and guide them away with their house line, and make sure that they're not thinking about chewing on that thing before you offer something else. You really do need to change their mind. Yeah. Let them know that that's not the right choice. And when they've decided that they don't want to continue doing that bad behavior, that thing, then it's okay to give them something to redirect onto.
Yeah, and I think a third example could be walking on leash. A lot of people will have the dog walking beside them. They'll yes feed. The dog will go to pull, or they'll get distracted and they pull the dog back, and then they feed the dog right back at their side. And again, the dog sort of thinks that the food is for leaving and sort of being pulled back. So if my dog leaves my side, I might redirect them with the leash to show them this is where I want. But then I would have the dog walk 1 or 2 steps at my side on a loose leash, fairly attentive to me, walking at the same pace I am, and then I would say yes, and I would reward. So the dog goes, okay, I can clearly see what I need to do to earn a reward. Dogs really, really like clarity. They want to know what to do to be right. So being as black and white with your expectations as you can is so important. But I think in order to be able to do that for your dog, you do need to understand the timing in dog training, and get good at being able to deliver your information with proper timing, because it's something you got to work at.
I want to say big congratulations to Darla Gillett. Graduated from grade 4 today.
Darla and Miss Cricket. Her dog's name's Cricket. I'm one of her instructors, and we had a ball today.
Very cool.
She was great.
I've seen some great questions coming in. So let's talk about rewarding. You touched briefly on loose leash walking. I see a lot of people have questions about loose leash walking, and maybe this is a good time to talk a little bit about how to reduce the amount of food in your loose leash walking. And this is because immediately something comes to mind when people are rewarding too much is when their dog is on a tight leash. And that doesn't necessarily mean that their dog is out of position. Their dog may be in the perfect position, but for whatever reason, we accidentally start to turn into the Statue of Liberty and tighten that leash as we reach down to reward our dogs. We're just inadvertently adding some of that leash tension. But being very, it's not the dog's fault. We're sort of creating that situation. But if you're hyper aware of that loose leash, of that slack, that clip just hanging down from their collar or their gentle leader or whatever, then you're really reinforcing the fact that that leash is loose, not only the position that they're in. So be mindful of that. Now, as we reduce food in our loose leash walking, maybe it's you're in a less distracting environment and you can go 10 steps instead of 5. Maybe you are, in a less distracting environment and you want to go 100 feet instead of 50 between rewards. Because remember, at the beginning, we want to reinforce good behavior. We want to really show the dog, this is where I want you to be. But over time, we want to reduce that, especially as we mentioned in this cold weather, if you live in the north. But you do need to help your dog to be successful. So you do need to do some things like pick up your pace a little bit, walk purposefully. Move like you're going somewhere. That's going to help your dog to be a little bit more attentive. It's also going to be more interesting for your dog. Use your voice a little bit more. We're not always going to be nattering away, insisting that our dogs pay attention and using all sorts of bubbly, goofy, silly language. But it's really helpful if your dog's distracted. It's really helpful if you're trying to overcome some challenge. And it means that buys you time between those food rewards so that you don't have to be holding. It's not the donkey and carrot thing forever. I don't know what you have to add to that.
Just as you were talking, it reminded me of a drill that I did with my class earlier this week. So in one of my advanced level classes, we were talking about weaning off of the food for walking. And I had them take their bait pouches off and put them on the side. And they were shocked when I asked them to do that because it was almost like removing their security blanket.
I know where this is going. And this is a great lesson for you guys.
So anyways, I don't know if you know where I'm going. I think I'm going to go in 2 places. One that you'll know and one that you don't know.
Oh, this is fun. Then we both don't know.
So I had them put their bait pouches on the side and they had to practice their let's go walking. And when we first did it, I didn't really give them a lot of helpful hints because I wanted to just kind of see what their natural instinct was to be with their dog. So they did a little bit of let's go and people were nervous because the bait pouches weren't on and they were a little bit quiet and the food wasn't there. And so people weren't very engaging with their dogs. And the dogs did a bit of pulling and it was okay, but it just wasn't great. So we did another round and I told them that they still weren't allowed to keep the food on their body, but what they were allowed to do is use their voice and their praise and their engagement. And so when we set out with the dogs again, they had no food on their bodies at all, but they had their voice and they had their touch and they had their praise. And we did about 45 seconds of walking, no food, just engagement, and the dogs were 100% better than the first round because people were just helping the dog and interacting with the dogs, and the dogs were kind of like, whoa, there's a person up here and that's a lot of fun. And then on top of that, we introduced what we call jackpot rewarding. And we can play a game with this. So if you're doing an exercise without food and your dog's doing a good job, you can come up with a keyword that says to your dog, I love what you're doing. Now let's run to where our reward is stashed. You could say jackpot. That's what we say, but you can say whatever you want. So as we're healing around the room, everyone yelled jackpot and they all ran back to their bait pouches and they gave their dog a big reward. We did it a few times and the dogs started to figure out, okay, if I walk with you without the food and I'm engaged, at any time, you're going to release and we're going to run back and we're going to have a lot of fun together. And their position got better, their attention got better, their engagement got better. And again, there's no food on their bodies. It was just a great way to show them that it's not the be-all, end-all. There's lots of other things you can do to motivate them.
This is one of the things that I've learned through teaching classes, whether it's like the beginner grades or the more advanced grades, is that once there's a foundation of understanding, sometimes it's helpful to sort of limit the handler or the owner or whatever, limit their ability to feel like they have food, like control. Just make them feel like, oh, this is a bit of a challenge. Because once we increase the challenge for them, they start to engage with the dog more. Kayl just told you that great exercise, talked a little bit about training, but that it's predictable for us. Yeah. We know that you or our students are going to be more engaging with their dogs when we eliminate their access to food. And this is the stuff that will sort of bridge those points between rewards when you're starting to have a great loose leash walking. When you start to increase the challenge a little bit, these are the things that are going to help you so that you don't always have to have food in your pockets or on in your hands, or in maybe your new McCann Dogs bait pouch, McCannDogs.store.
I think we should say, though, that with that, you also need to be smart about when you're ready to add these types of steps in. So if you've only been getting success with walking, or if you haven't been getting success with walking, we wouldn't suggest you do what we just talked about.
Right.
So this is something that you would do as your dog's starting to show you that they have more understanding. So we want you to start off, if you're very new at this, if you have a puppy or if you have a dog that you're retraining, you need to start with high value rewards, and a lot of them, in a very low distracting environment, so that your success rate is very, very high. Once that's successful, you can go one of two ways. You can take the high reward, and then you could go to a different location and up the distraction. Or you could stay in the same location and you could lower the reward, so that you're not going to, okay, I'm so awesome, I can walk in my up and down my hallway when there's nothing going on. Look at me, I don't have food, I'm amazing. And then try to go for a 45-minute walk around the block where there's dogs and cars and people and all kinds of things, and then you just want to rip your hair out. So you want to make sure that your level of distraction and difficulty is being thrown at your dog in a very smooth way, a very gradual way, so that there is always an opportunity to achieve success. And then you might sometimes say, you know what? I have overfaced my dog in this moment. This is not going well. You need to roll back to the level that you were good at, and then think about how you can climb the stairs again, at maybe making some different choices, so that you have more success.
Yeah, and we're sort of like, with these progressions, we're sort of taking another step up the ladder, moving up the ladder, moving up the ladder. Occasionally, you need to make things a little bit easier for your dog. But when you do make things a little bit easier, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to pull food out again. You're going to reduce the distance, you're going to reduce the duration, you're going to reduce the distraction, but they're still going to have to earn it. The worst thing you see is people who feel like they're struggling, maybe with something as simple as attention. It might be with a puppy or a young dog, with attention, and they think, okay, I know what's going to work. I know if I pull out food at this point and I put it on my dog's nose and I turn them around, that's great in the beginning. It's a really important step in the beginning. But if they're starting to be at a level of understanding where they're turning on their own, you don't want them to teach you to pull out food. Same thing goes with the sit. Same thing goes with the stay. It's something that I saw someone ask a really a good question. Let's see if I can find it here. Someone asked me about, it was something to do with the stay, and I can't find it now.
It was the second one, I think.
What's it?
I just saw the word stay.
Oh, yeah, this is good. So Melinda says, I have trouble with long play stays. I have treats and reward periodically staying, but then she knows I have them in demand bark. Should I just be rewarding with praise for this exercise? Well, a couple of things. You might need to ask your dog to quiet and then step in and then remind them to sit and, replace them in position. But be careful that your dog isn't barking and then you're coming in and then, oh, good, the barking stopped. Yes, reward. These are the little things that sometimes people will do. The other thing, I know you're chomping at the bit. I know you have something great to say.
Go right ahead, sweetie.
Okay, I'm just going to do this. Something that people will do when it comes to food rewarding, especially in a stationary exercise like the stay, is they'll get the food out way too damn early. It's just making
way too damn early.
Yeah, it's making it too hard for your dog.
This is a pet peeve of Ken's, guys.
It really is, because your dog's working their butt off and they're failing because you're making it too difficult for them. So when it comes to rewarding, we're going to use that reinforcer, that marking the dog's great choice at a distance.
Then they know they're right.
Exactly.
And
that buys you the
don't have to
time.
be so fast.
Precisely. That buys you the time to get in there without food in your hands, making it more difficult for them. Then you can reward them. And I want you to really think about that. If your dog gets up, let's say that your dog's sitting at your side, and this is another thing people struggle with a little bit. You're working on no jumping up. Kayl talked about it a little bit. We've shown it here on the train station a million times. But you're about to reward your dog and they get up. What do you think you should do? What's the first thing you need to do? You need to put your food away first. You really do.
Are you waiting for them to respond through the camera?
Yeah, I wanted to give them a second to really think about it. You need to put that food away first, because imagine, I'm trying to guide Kayl around and I've got a slice of pizza behind her head. That's what you're doing to your dog as you try to replace them back in position with food in your hand. Food goes away first so that there's not that extra distraction.
Yeah, it's not really being helpful in that moment. It's actually becoming a distraction.
Yeah. So I want you to think about that with those stationary exercises. Let's talk a little bit about making the dog earn it a little bit, and like when you might capture a moment where your dog's made a good choice, rather than, so this doesn't just mean food reward. I'm thinking about, like, we get so many questions. My dog, I'm sitting on the couch, my dog keeps dropping his toy in my lap. It's the same thing can be true for a dog doing some behavior and you rewarding it with food. We really want to think about an opportunity for the dog to earn it. But let's talk about, like, sometimes you might capture a moment. I mean, does anything spring to mind where your dog makes a good choice?
Yeah, I think sometimes what happens is we sometimes inadvertently reinforce things that we don't want to, and then other times it can work the opposite way, and it can really work for us. Sometimes you can use rewards that are a little bit unconventional.
Right.
So the ball on the lap is a good thing. The dog comes over, drops the ball on the lap, you pick it up, you throw it, and the dog goes, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." I bring it back, I put it on your lap, you throw it again. But you can use the same process. So the dog's basically problem solving it. You never told the dog to put the ball on the lap. The dog went, "Hey, I wonder if this will work." They try something and you say, "Yes, it would work." And you get up and you throw it. We use the same type of reward base for things like, in the morning when we go to let our dogs outside. We have a couple of our dogs that are really excited to go outside in the morning. They want to go out, they want to run, they want to have some fun. And initially they would be a little bit obnoxious at the door. They would be jumping, they'd be jumping up with their paws on the door, being a little bit obnoxious. And we would wait for the dog to be calm. And then as soon as the dog would be calm, we'd open the door. And a few days of doing that, the dog started to figure out jumping and being obnoxious at the door led to absolutely nothing. And every time they sat and were calm, I would open the door. And the dog would go, "Okay." And before you know it, we have dogs that go and they sit at the door looking at me like this. They can't wait, but they realize that if they want to go and do something that they want, which is what they find rewarding, running around in the backyard,
this is so important.
They have to give me something that I want. And that's sitting calmly at the door instead of jumping obnoxiously at it. So you can use this process of teaching the dog to earn rewards by being really aware when your dog makes a good choice and then choosing to reinforce them for it. It could be a reinforcement that you're ready with, like food, toys, pet, praise, or it could be something that's a little bit more different. It could be maybe the dog has laid really nicely at your feet, while you're watching TV, and they've been really good. Then maybe their reward could be, "Okay, come up on the couch," and let them sit up on the couch with you for a little bit. Yeah. You can give your dogs freedom or luxury or a resource that maybe they don't always have. You can give it to them because they've been giving you good behavior. It also can work the opposite way. Yes, yeah. If my dog is up on the couch and they're being obnoxious and they are, jumping at me or biting at me or growling and protecting an area, that dog's not having any couch time whatsoever. They're going to be on the floor. They're going to be on a leash. I'm going to be on the couch. The dog's going to be on the ground to basically show them, you know what, you have to earn your right to get up here by giving good behavior. And if you're not going to give a good behavior, that luxury of being able to get up on the furniture or go in the backyard without a leash or have freedom to go up and down the stairs or whatever it might be, that's gone. Yeah. That's taken away. Yeah. And then they earn it back through good behavior. And this technique works so well for any age of dog if you're trying to change their mind.
We often talk, you'll hear stuff, myths in the dog training world. I mean, there's a million of them, but one might be, you have to walk through a doorway before your dog does, because you need to really show them that you're the alpha. And that isn't necessarily the case. It's just not the case. But I will tell you, there's a lot of value in asking something from your dog and then allowing them through the door. You always wonder how people are, how do dog trainers, dogs get so good so fast? I get that you have all sorts of skills for them to work on, but it has nothing to do with the skills that we work on. It's all of the other stuff. It's the nuances. It's things like getting my dog to earn that opportunity to go through the door. So, maybe it's, I ask for a sit and a little wait if it's a young dog, a little tiny wait, and then I go and then he goes. Your dog's starting to learn that they get something if they give you something. Mm-hmm. So using that reward, exactly like Kayl mentioned, capturing those opportunities, taking advantage of these natural training opportunities. How many times a day are you going through a door with your dog? From this point forward, I want you to ask them to sit and wait or lie down and wait or whatever. Get them to do something before you go through. And to be honest, it's not about going through the door. It's just a very natural visual cue for you to think about, oh, I'm going to get my dog to work a little bit. And you're going to be surprised when you start to have a dog that's making those choices and is successful in their wait. And we have lots of videos. We have a couple videos on the channel teaching your dog to wait and stay and all kinds of stuff. Lots of stationary exercises, but the value of these exercises is that your dog starts to think, if I give something, if I offer a sit, if I work a little bit, then I get something in return. And that's really the essence of why it's so important that you think about rewarding too much. Yeah. Are you giving your dog too much freedom? Are you giving them too much food? Can happen. You can be rewarding way too much. You need to be thinking about how's my dog earning this? What are they doing to deserve this reward?
And I think that bleeds into our next topic pretty perfectly. And that is also make sure that you're not accidentally reinforcing your dog for things that you really don't want them to do. One of the most common things that we see happen is people inadvertently rewarding their dogs for being worried, for example,
right.
Or
that's a good point.
Barking at another dog, or being disrespectful to them. And, we have some dogs that are a little bit worried or afraid, and we have a lot of people that will pick the puppy up and coddle them or say, it's okay, and pet the dog. And you have to put yourself in your dog's shoes sometimes and sort of think like they do. So if you're scared and somebody's saying, it's okay, good, it's okay to be scared, it's okay to be scared, when really what you want to be doing is teaching that dog to be brave and to be confident, you want to be careful that you're not inadvertently rewarding behaviors that you really don't want your dog to be doing. Now, to say that, you certainly aren't going to correct those behaviors. I'm not going to say, hey, don't be scared. That would be completely inappropriate. But what I could do is put the dog in a situation that would be easier for them to be confident, and then go on at the basis of rewarding the confident behavior. So if I see the dog's ears come up, or if I see the dog relax a little bit, then I'm going to say, oh, good puppy, good for you. And I'm going to praise in a confidently way. I'm going to pet the puppy in that moment. So my puppy starts to go, ooh, being bold really earns me a lot of reward and a lot of interaction. The same thing happens if, the puppies are nipping and biting on the shirts. We have a lot of people say, oh, don't do that. And they pet the dog.
Right.
The dog says, Mom loves when I tug on her sweatshirt. Yeah. She pets me and she tells me that, in this high squeaky voice, don't do that. But what if they don't know what don't do that means? They know how to read your body language. They know how to read the intonation in your voice.
Yeah, that's really important. Even more so than the word is that the inflection.
You might as well be saying, good dog, good dog, good dog.
Right.
So how you speak to them and how you're touching them and when you're reinforcing them, all are going to be making the dog believe that what they're doing in that moment is right. So always look at what behavior you're getting and say to yourself, do I like this? Is this something that I want my dog to repeat? Should I be reinforcing it? Or do I need to redirect my dog to a different choice or a different situation to hopefully get a different behavior to be offered, and then reinforce that?
I get excited when we talk about these kinds of things.
This is some deep stuff, guys.
It really is. And you know what it deserves? I should toot. I think I should too.
I'm going to drop two. I don't think that you should.
But these are the kinds of things that will change your training, your puppy training, your dog training, your senior dog training.
Things that people miss all the time.
This is the stuff. This is going to sound like a bit of a shameless plug, but this is the kind of stuff that we talk a lot about in our online training program, and My Dog Can. But specific to each person's needs. Whatever. If you're struggling with just the YouTube videos, then that's a great opportunity, and you can certainly check it out. And it was just an opportunity for me to talk, about what we do there, and I didn't intend for that to be a huge plug, but we've reached the it's past 8:15, so now we're going to open the chat up a little bit to general puppy questions. We are going to still talk about if you're rewarding too much. Ask your question. Do you feel like you're rewarding too much? Are you reinforcing the bad stuff? How can we fix that? How can we change that for your dog? But we will also take a quick look at some of the other questions coming in. Did you forget to post
the question of the day?
Oh, I don't think so. No, I saw people answering it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? Now that we mentioned it, where is the question of the day? Oh. So have you accidentally trained a behavior with bad rewarding? Is there something that you've accidentally taught your dog to do? Answer that in the chat. 4 question marks will let us know that that's what it's about. So Charles Arnett, welcome to the train station. Charles, welcome back. We use treats and praise. She does not get treats all the time, so it makes the treats better. Yeah, exactly. So that randomization makes a huge difference. And I mean, there's just so much evidence of that, that it builds drive, that your dog, it's like the casino. Right? It's like the dogs have the same response. If that randomization, not really knowing, encourages you even more than a consistent reward would. So randomizing it, rewarding your dog every third time, or every if they give you an extra fast response, that's the kind of stuff that's going to increase your motivation. Pat asks, is it normal to walk with only one glove because the other has all the treats? Well, I mean, you might have to, especially in this cold weather. I would highly encourage you, Pat, to have your both hands available. One for your leash, well, two for your leash. You might need to do like a redirection or slide your hand down the leash and help your dog to be successful. But don't be carrying food in your hand because it's just too apparent. You want to be a little bit more inconspicuous. Get yourself a McCann Dogs bait pouch. That's what you need, Pat. Marge says, my 3-year-old rescue won't even play fetch without a reward every time he brings the ball back. So let's talk a little bit about rewarding for retrieving and how you can change that without using a food reward.
Yeah, we typically don't use food rewards when we're teaching a retrieve. We often, especially if the dog likes to retrieve, we will use the act of retrieving again as the reward for bringing the reward back, for bringing the toy back, I mean to say. But we do it in a very controlled manner. So if we're going to be working on any type of retrieve work, we will have the dog on a long line or a leash, sometimes even the toy on a long line or a leash, so that if the dog goes out and gets the reward, I keep saying reward when I mean to say toy or fetch toy, and the dog doesn't bring it back immediately, we can assist the dog in doing that by, using the line to redirect them back in our way. We never chase the dog with a toy in the mouth or tackle them when they get close. We basically encourage the dog with the leash to bring the toy right back to us. And then when we take the toy from them, we don't take it from them right away. We will play a little game of tug and let the dog know, when you bring it back to me, fun things happen. I'm not just going to take it from you right away. Some dogs will say, well, why would I give it to you when you're snatching it from me? So we take a hold of the toy and we play and we make some funny sounds and we sort of tickle the dog's sides and make them sort of believe that coming back with the toy is really, really fun. Then we might trade the dog for the toy for a piece of food if we're working in out or drop it command. And then we would throw the toy again on leash. And I wouldn't practice my retrieve off leash until my dog was reliably bringing the fetch toy back every single time.
It's crucial for your dog's learning.
And then I would and rather than taking the dog off leash, I would go from having the leash in my hand to having it on the ground, so it's a backup. So if the dog makes a poor choice as I've made my progression, the line's there for me to pick up and then reinforce. And then usually if you've gone through those two stages, the dog started to put 2 and 2 together that, if they bring it back, you'll throw it again. Now you have a great retrieve, and you never really even needed to use food in the first place.
Yeah, really good. Kathy Beck, thank you for the leash videos. New to me, 4-month-old puppy, starting to understand, walk on the left down the hall. Outside, not yet. Outside, she's very distracted. Is that on track for timing and age-wise with a 16-week-old puppy?
Yeah,
for sure. You haven't had.
We don't do a lot of leash walking with our dogs
before that.
Yeah, when they're that age. Like out and about. We might practice in our house a lot. Like the dog will do a lot of leash walking, but in a super controlled manner. We do a lot of walking up and down our driveway looking like crazy people.
Right.
But we might be out there for 20 minutes, but we're not necessarily going the kilometers. We're spending the time. We have controlled distractions around. When I first do it, I might not have any of the other dogs around. I just go out with the puppy, me and him, just to kind of focus on that, and then we build from there once the dog's ready.
Yeah, really good. Andrea Dreyer says, my dog's 16 weeks old. I sit, stay, and she stays up to 15 seconds now. I mark with my yes and walk back to her, and then I go into my pouch once I'm close to feed. Is this okay? Andrea, that's exactly what you should be doing. Mark with your yes at a distance when your dog is successful. 16 weeks old for a stay is pretty darn young, so make sure 15 seconds. I mean, maybe that's reasonable. Don't go too far. Don't really make it too hard for your dog. But I'm impressed if you can get a 15-second stay.
Just make sure that when you go back to feed her that she's not releasing herself. When we teach a stay, the dog has to hold position until they hear our release command. We use the word okay for that. So when you go back and give a treat, make sure that you're releasing her with an okay, so that she eventually can go longer than that, because otherwise what will happen is the dog will get the treat and assume the behavior is over. In our dog training, treats mean you're right. Keep doing what you're doing. It doesn't mean that you're right and you get to stop what you're doing.
Good. Did I just answer this one? I don't think so. Andrea says, how do you break a dog for being ball obsessed? With a toy, our dog drops the ball either on our laps or on the floor and stands in front of us. He just stands there and gives us the 1,000-mile stare down until we throw it. Now, you really do need to manage your dog's access to these kinds of things. Giving your dog a job or having them in their crate when you aren't able to engage with them, when you aren't able to play these games is really important. And it's, you might just have to get them to go lie down in their bed and endure the 1,000-mile stare down while you get whatever you get done. You can't allow them to push you around in a sense to insist that you play with them. That's going to be that'll be a tipping point for you. And it seems like such a little thing, but it can make a big difference. Yeah,
there's a time to play, and then there's also a lot of merit and importance in teaching your dog to have an off button in the house. We have pretty high drive dogs at our house, and people are often shocked that when they come in and they're in our home, sometimes don't even know where the dogs are. They're, curled up in a corner somewhere, sleeping. We teach them from a very young age that there's a time to play and be energetic, but then also you need to learn to chill out and just relax so that there's some downtime, so that they're not constantly always like bugging you to do stuff. They need to learn just to chill out, find a spot, go grab a bone, chew, entertain themselves, but be calm about it.
Good. Melinda.
Hard for a young dog.
It is. Melinda says, I train my dog to take my shoes. Even she doesn't even chew on them anymore. She just takes them to get my attention. It's so easy to not see it happening. Yes. For sure, Melinda. You need to be very aware. Just don't allow her access to those shoes, or train through it. Work on like your leave it or something like that. Mm-hmm. Kathy says, yes, my border collie is a thief, and in order to get important things back from her, I have to get treats out to get her not to run from me.
That border collie needs to be on a leash.
Yeah. This is the perfect example of a situation where you need to use your house line. The other thing is in a situation where you aren't trying to get something back from them that your puppy's picked up, you need to work on your out or your drop it, like in a completely separate situation, because using food as like the trade when your dog takes something that's like a nuisance behavior, picks up your shoe or whatever, is quickly going to teach that dog to take that thing. So separately with your puppy, or dog, have a house line on, a leash, some way to control them, and work on an out, work on a drop it that's completely independent of one of these events. It's going to be helpful for you guys. Let's see. Courtney says,
somebody asked if we have a jackpot video. I don't think we have a jackpot video, do we?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
That is an excellent idea. We're always looking for ideas for videos, so maybe we'll get that taped for you.
Good idea. Courtney says, can you talk at all about tips for preventing reactivity? My border collie pup has just started really noticing people outside and wanting to bark at them. And this is going to have a lot to do. I mean, it's hard to know. I guess like through the front window would be when they're starting to notice those things. But we could talk a little bit about management in this situation, and being proactive, like if your puppy's barking, like when you're outside with them, issuing your leave it early enough that your dog's going to give you a few cues that they're going to bark or that they're going to do something. So identifying those cues and interrupting that behavior early so that they don't choose to bark is going to be really helpful for you guys.
Yes.
Let's see what we got here. Susan says, my puppy's 9 weeks old, been here a week. A garbage truck scared him. He was on a long line and just walked himself back to the door. Did the same things with headlights tonight. Is that okay? So their dogs will have, especially at that age, be much more sensitive to sounds and things like that. And these are some of the challenges that you'll face with a puppy. I mean, it is okay that happened, but do your best.
You don't
to
want
avoid
it to happen again.
Yeah.
9 weeks is really old, and it's actually a very impressionable age for puppies. So try to make sure that you're putting the dog in scenarios at this point where they're not going to have too many bad situations or interactions happen, because they're old enough now that they'll really remember those things. So it's not the end of the world that that's happened, but it's certainly something that you don't want to continue happening. 9 weeks is pretty young, so you might want to wait till you have a little bit more of a relationship, a little bit more skills underneath your belt before you're exposing them to the loud trucks and the loud sounds again, just so the puppy can lean into you a little bit more for confidence.
Becky says, do I praise and treat my 3-month-old when she jumps on me and then I have to yell at her to get down? She jumps on me constantly and I don't know what to do. I'm not really sure what you mean with that question.
I do. No, you are not going to. You can certainly praise your puppy once the puppy's no longer jumping on you, but you're not going to reward. Because the dog might start to have that as a bit of a vicious circle. You are missing one crucial step, though, and that you're letting your puppy jump on you in the first place. So when your puppy is out and about, you should have a leash or a line on the puppy. And, if it's a situation where you've taken her out of her crate or you've walked in the door or whatever it might be, maybe she's not loose and out of her crate in those situations, or have the long line on so you can step on it. So if they go to jump up, they can't actually succeed. And then when her forepaws touch the floor, you could even take some treats and lure her into a sitting position. Yes, good girl. And then feed her in the sit position, pet her in the sit position. Show her what you want her to do instead of jumping. But if she's always rehearsing jumping up and then you're pulling her off, you're not going to fix your problem. You need to stop the jumping from happening altogether and then reinforce her for something different, like sitting.
Yeah. And if Becky is Canadian, when your puppy is oot and about, Kayl, you said out and about, oot and about.
That's not how we say it.
It's pretty darn close. Daniel says, my pupp's doing great on potty training and then had a day of regressing. She's limited to our living room, backyard, and not giving her full range of the house. I love it. These are the choices that I love to see. And I like when people can identify some of these things. It's so nice to see, Daniel. It sounds like you're making good choices. Lots of supervision. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I'm not sure how. But Anais says, my puppy anticipates and does all her tricks at once. How do I stop her from doing this? Now, when I saw this, I thought this has happened before. We've had puppies do this before. Let's talk about that anticipating.
Yeah. I love anticipation.
Right.
I think it's great.
Right. So this leans a little bit into rewarding.
Yeah.
Like how you can build drive. So it's an appropriate question.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want her obviously to be doing this all of the time, but it shows you that she's starting to figure out that when she does things for you, she's going to earn rewards. And I think that's a really, really lovely thing, especially for a puppy to be doing that. Simply reward the things that you like and ignore the things that you don't like in that situation. If you ask her to sit and she lies down and shakes a paw and gives you all these other things, then just repeat sit and show her what you want, and then and reward her for that. Just be clear and consistent. But if she's anticipating those things and offering them, it's a pretty good problem to have.
Yeah, mix up the order. Andrea, we may have already answered this one, I'm not sure. Yep. So what are some good environmental enrichment? Oh, no. So what are some good environmental enrichment things to put out in our yard for our dog to discover? We have a border collie that gets bored very easily, lots of energy. Now, Andrea, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I hate the idea of enrichment. The kind of enrichment I like is the kind of enrichment that involves me. So I don't like the ball pits. I think they're ridiculous. I don't like the snuffle mats. I don't see the value in relationship building. I don't see the dog working for me at all. However, like there are situations where you might, it's ice storm outside, or there's a reason something happens and you don't get a chance to like do something to really get all your dog's energy out, then maybe you can use some enrichment activity. But I think in my mind, the kind of enrichment I want you to think about is trick training. Maybe like doing something that really involves you.
Teach your border collie to retrieve. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
We have several border collies of our own, and if we were just to let them go out in the backyard and like find something to do and give them something to do, they could become quite obsessive with it because they're a bit of a neurotic breed, which I'm sure you've probably already realized.
Yeah.
So we do lots of hiking with our border collies. We do lots of retrieving, and we teach them how to play disc, and just so that they're going out and they're exuding their energy and they're doing it with things that include us.
Yeah.
And that builds a more solid relationship as well.
Right. Yeah. I have a real issue with a lot of the approaches to enrichment The word just worries me a little bit because I've seen the negative impact of some enrichment. We do have a couple like brain games on the channel that, so one's the ball, hide the treats one. That's a great one because it involves you as well. You can get a muffin tray out and put a bunch of tennis balls in the muffin tray, and then your dog can sort of work through, but you're there. Like what's so good about it is that you're there with them.
You could put stuff out in the backyard, like some tunnels and stuff, but go out and do it with her.
Exactly.
Like do it together. Don't just leave her out to do it on her own.
That's a huge takeaway, and I want all of you guys to think about that. Now, every train station, we try to answer someone's voice question. Now, if you're not aware, we do have a McCann Dogs podcast, and actually we have a train station replay podcast too that's available. I don't know if I linked it for you guys, but we're getting a lot of plays now for like the week after the train station. So if you can't catch us live on video here, you can always listen to us after on that train station replay. But one of the things we like to do is answer your voice questions, and we have people call in, and I've got two questions this week that I've sort of saved at the top of the list that we're going to dive into. I'll just turn my phone up and make sure it's not too late. Ready to go? So first question is from Gabrielle.
Hi guys, first time looking at your channel. Awesome. I love your advice. We have a 20-month-old border collie and we're getting another new border collie puppy. My question is, where and how do we place the crates? Because our border collie now goes to crate at night, and we want to make sure that we place the crates properly so that they kind of bond, but I'm not sure. So your help would really be appreciated. And hello from Nova Scotia, Canada.
Oh, very cool.
Fellow Canadian.
Well, thanks for joining us, Gabrielle. So what advice would you have?
I actually even just love that she's asking that question in the first place.
I know.
Like,
that
is so.
That's why we love you guys here at the train station.
Such a smart question.
We're thinking deeper here.
People
We're not
don't
just
even think about those things.
Yeah.
I would when we have a new puppy, we have some of our older dogs aren't crated anymore, and some of our middle-aged dogs are. Depending on the dog, but I would start off by separating the crate to begin with. Often we will we'll bring the puppy into the bedroom with us to work on some bonding with us, and then we'll have the adult dogs out of the room for a couple month or so until the puppy is better crate trained.
Yep.
And then during the day, sometimes we'll have the puppies crated beside the other dogs, and sometimes we'll put like a partition between, like we'll get like a board or something so the puppy can't bug the older dog and bark at them or stick their legs through the crate door or anything like that until the puppy is a bit more, behaving themselves in the crate basically, and then it won't really matter whether they're side by side. They should learn to be able to do that, but in the beginning it's best to put the crates into two separate locations. When you have a puppy crate, I know when we have a puppy crate, we get the ones that you can move around. So the puppy's crate will go up to our room at nighttime. It'll come down to the kitchen, during the day so that it's around us. It will go into the car when we go to work. It will come back and do the same thing all over again. When they're small, you can kind of get away with like taking them all over the place, especially if you have a border collie who's going to be bigger eventually. Yep. I think that was
a great question and good answer. Next one's from Karen.
Oh.
Hi,
this
is Karen Burchett, and I have a question. I have a 4-month-old puppy, and I have an older dog who used to be a service dog. So she's very good. She's a very good girl, and they never taught her how to play or anything. And the puppy keeps going and biting the side of her face. And I don't know how to stop this, but she's getting like scratches and stuff on her face from letting him bite her. So how do I get the puppy to stop biting my older dog? Any tips would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Now, this is a mistake that I made long before I was a dog trainer, but introducing my puppy to my older dog. And what ultimately happened was that my older dog got an ulcer. It was a bleeding ulcer.
Sad.
Yeah. it's super common for people
Yeah.
to introduce their puppy to their older dog far too soon.
And then not know what to do to control it.
And how to pump the brakes on the puppy.
Sometimes you can be lucky enough to get that odd dog, that odd older dog that is just absolutely brilliant with puppies and will very appropriately tell the puppy off. And then the puppy's like, okay, won't do that again. We have a couple of those dogs that are just brilliant with puppies, but that's very rarely the case, actually.
And we don't leave it up to the dog to make those decisions.
And if you haven't, so in this lady's case, what's happening is the older dog is basically saying, I don't really like this, I don't really like this, but she's trying also not to get in trouble by doing anything inappropriate to the puppy. So she's just taking it. And what will actually happen is you'll really start to hurt the relationship between those two dogs. There's a lot of sort of resentment built up between the two, because the dogs are basically saying, you're annoying and no one ever stops you from doing this. So I don't really want to be near you. So puppy absolutely needs to be on a leash or a line, and you're going to use some words like leave it, or maybe an informal recall or their name, and then you're going to follow through and make it happen by using the leash to redirect them away. So I would say leave it. I would go and pick up the leash. I would bump the puppy away. I would do a couple pulses on the leash or pop the dog away from the older dog. And then I would give the younger dog something to do, and I would monitor their interaction very closely. The other thing that we tend to do with our dogs a lot is when they're puppies, we separate them from the older dogs. Yeah. And we separate them until we have a few skills under our belt, like a recall, leave it, response to name, a sit and wait, lie down and wait, those types of things. So now when my puppy is around the older dogs, I have a few skills that I can utilize to get the dog to be a bit more respectful to me and to my older dog as well. But if you're not able to get the puppy to listen around the older dog, that kind of circles right back to what we said at the very beginning of the live stream. And that it means that scenario, that degree of distraction is too great.
Right.
And it's allowing your dog to make poor choices, and you're setting them up to fail. And I know that sounds really negative, and nobody really does that on purpose. It's just you need to be aware of the scenarios you're putting your dog in and say to yourself, is my dog able to make good choices in this scenario or not? And if the answer is no, you're not ready for that yet.
Right.
It will be down the future, but not in that moment in time.
I feel like the train has come all the way back into the station.
My voice is also almost gone.
And think about, is your puppy is finding this rewarding, is finding interacting with that older dog rewarding, and you are rewarding your puppy too much with that opportunity. Keep in mind, guys, if you have an older dog at home, they didn't get a choice on whether you got a puppy or not. It's forced upon them, and we really need to make sure that we separate, give them their own space. Don't force them to interact with the puppy if they're not ready for it. And we don't want to reward our puppy allowing them to make a mess and torture your older dog, if that's the case with your puppy. So your puppy's being far too rewarded.
Old dogs rule.
Now, a couple of things that I really need to mention is a huge thank you. You guys saw the man, lots of links looting in the chat, dropping links, and he was busy
doing
dropping
lot of links
tonight.
Yeah.
Very, very helpful. Dan the moderator man, helping us out a bunch and helping you guys out with lots of links that were great to see. Becky Parker also in there, giving lots of good advice. A big thank you to C. Ellis for the super chat.
Yes.
Very cool for you to support the train station. We do appreciate it, and he gets to turn the lights on and off in here, which is pretty cool. Now, the thing I should mention is that if this is your first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We publish new videos every week to help you to have a well-behaved four-legged family member. And if you haven't yet, make sure you click that bell for notifications. The train station schedule is changing, and you don't want to miss the video that's going to change your training entirely. So make sure that you have those notifications turned on. On that note, I want to thank you guys for joining us here. I'm going to give one more, a toot outro. I don't know. For you guys joining us. But on that note, I'm Ken.
I'm Kayl.
Happy training, guys. Bye for now.